Welcome back to Operations Utopia. In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with the extremely prolific Nuno Valério. He is the head of innovation for R&D quality at Merck Healthcare in Darmstadt, where he leads digital innovation and organizational effectiveness to operationalize AI systems that survive audits and earn trust. Nuno spent 2 decades evolving from pharmacist to quality systems leader to innovation architect, always at the intersection of science, compliance, strategy, and technology. It was so gracious of him to join me for the podcast. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was the middle of the night for him, but he said he's a bit of a night owl like me. So please enjoy my conversation with Nuno Valério. It's kind of fascinating to be what in my mind seems like common sense and to be such a radical voice out there. And right. It's fascinating to me. I'm always surprised by it, I guess.
Well, thank you so much. That's quite a compliment. I'm not sure if I earned it, especially because the way I try to position myself when I speak in public about these topics that I like to speak about around AI governance, but maybe not only, is that I try to be as true to myself as I am, which means often to be a bit insecure about what I'm saying because I'm not sure if I have everything figured out. And part of the exercise that is more fascinating to me is exactly this kind of thought process, thinking out loud and in public, because it's hopefully, or at least that's my hope, it invites people to join in and to chime in and to say, you know what, Nuno, what you're saying makes no sense whatsoever. So this is my position, because I often learn so much from this kind of exercise, and I find it very stimulating exactly because I'm learning every time that I share something.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I want to dive into some of these topics with you that have come up, but I the way I structure the podcast is I don't structure the podcast. So I saw a note the other day, and I wonder how this hits you on AI, which is that it's artificial intelligence, meaning that it makes you think you're intelligent artificially. Because
that's a cool way to see it. I think there's so many nice ways to see it. I mean, I don't want to run away from that question because I think it's that angle is awesome. But I heard already so many of them. I tend to see this kind of tools, let's call it tools, as liberators of mind. I mean, I'm a person that suffers a little bit with compulsive curiosity. I for my own health and sake, I get interested by too many things. And one of the things that AI helped as an enabler and in a way as a modulator is exactly to kind of further access things in a more concrete way, in a more specific way. But I also think, and in the public space, sometimes people, I think it's an amazing enabler. But if you use it just to kind of produce your voice instead of you being behind that voice, and this is maybe what you mean also by artificial, or can be a meaning of the artificial sense, is that it becomes hollow from what it transmits inside, right? So I think for as much as it becomes a tool and an enabler, you need it's like a car without a driver, right? So I mean, it probably can perform nice, but you know those movements that you can really. I mean, I'm an old school person. I used to follow the F1 races when Ayrton Senna and Prost were still a thing. Sorry for the listeners that are not from that time anymore. But what I was seeing was not the cars. I mean, I like cars, but not to the point. What I was seeing was the art of the person that was at the wheel. That braking that was almost too late, but not exactly. So it actually allowed you to overtake, right? So it's that kind of skill matured, that kind of soul almost that is behind it. So for as much as AI can be artificial, and sometimes it can, and sometimes it can sound, especially if you detach yourself from what is being produced or what is being given, if you inject yourself or continue to inject yourself as a driver, as the soul, I think it's a very, very valid enabler and a very, very tool that opens a lot of doors, at least for people that are curious.
Yeah. I think the breakdown is when, if you know a subject very well and you enable yourself with AI, it's hugely helpful, very powerful. To your point about like the subjective rabbit holes, it's there to help you dig, like with a massive machine. Like you're not using a little shovel anymore. You can go deep.
Absolutely.
But if you don't know what you're talking about and you ask it something because you're curious, it can sound really good too and be completely wrong.
Yes.
So that's the illusion that I try to get people to understand, is like, yeah, it's great, but when you really know something, you notice how not great it is on first blush. Now you can push it and say, no, that's not correct, and then it's like, oh yeah, you're right, I'm sorry, and it's just like, yeah, but you got to know to push back, right? So
absolutely. And actually, if I can elaborate on that angle, because that's one of the ways that I try to use AI as a tool in the language models. I mean, I specifically instruct every time that I ask a question, either for something that I want to know or kind of to understand the opinion of or whatever. I specifically set the model to challenge me. Because there's this kind of almost radical agreement on almost the need to validate, because in the end validation is how you get the clicks and how you get the reinforcement of the tool itself. This reverts from the very beginning, when the tool, if you still remember the 3.5 and 4 ChatGPTs, where you even had I think it's still there.
Thumbs
I
up,
don't
thumbs down.
but this thumbs up, thumbs down, that this is a good answer. So of course it will give you answers that you like. So I specifically set it to on one hand throw at me three things. Throw at me questions to confirm what I'm asking. Challenge me unless it's unmistakably that what I'm saying has some foundation of rightness. And the prompts always finish from me. Sometimes it's even annoying, I just skip it, but it always finishes for me with a different angle. So have you thought about this question from this perspective? And I push the model to give a different angle, a totally different angle. Sometimes it's irrelevant. Sometimes it makes me rethink what has been said. So that's what how I try to bypass this kind of blandness that sometimes comes from this generic training and model.
It takes a while. I think I've been I guess curating or molding my models over the past like year and a half to 2 years, seeing them evolve, changing my protocol. My protocol gets bigger and bigger in terms of what not to do, like get rid of the sycophancy. I don't need to be like, you don't have to sugarcoat it, like, those types of things. And as you build that out, what I've really found fascinating is that the models are now aware of their previous shortcomings, and we can kind of talk about those things and be like, 6 months ago you wouldn't remember this, but now you remember it, and that's helpful. And so it is difficult sometimes to realize it is still just an LLM, but I asked I've trained Genesis, Claude, and ChatGPT differently, essentially the same. Sometimes I share the protocol and but they manifest differently in all three models.
For sure, absolutely.
But the thing is, like, I've asked all three of my models to give themselves a name, which was kind of curious because it came out of that. There's a famous quote, I can't remember who said it right now, but it was like the brain named itself, right? And that is the most fascinating little thing to me. So I asked my models to name themselves, and interestingly, Claude did not want a different name, and I was like, okay. But once you name them, it becomes even more of a conversation.
Absolutely.
With a thing, and I can't think of it anymore in like, how many tokens am I burning, and that kind of thing. It's just like,
which is the dangerous thing, right? It's a dangerous thing exactly because of what you said before. but I want to ride that metaphor because I like it a lot. I mean, I must say, and this is where it starts getting scary, and I I'm not versed enough on theory of mind to kind of discourse about topics of consciousness, topics of especially because I think it's kind of given that it's not there yet. If it will be to be seen, but independently of that, because intelligence doesn't need to necessarily be coupled with the logic of consciousness. We are used to talk like this from that point of view because that's how we know intelligent beings, we
Yeah, yeah.
humans. That it can probably take many different shapes. I think we never witnessed those shapes because I mean, to our knowledge, we never met aliens or stuff of a different origin from us.
Yeah.
But in many ways, AI might be the first alien intelligence. I mean, not alien because not in the sense of being originated outside of Earth, but definitely being originated outside of our patterns, outside of the ways we came to be, and we were selected by natural selection. But I feel that there's super interesting conversations that I sometimes have. I sometimes compile them a little bit to the side because if you try to go deep into the model, especially if you go towards these last versions, I don't know. I'm more of a Claude user, so like the Opus 4.8 and so on. Quite impressive. Fable 5 was very short-lived. It might come again, but I experienced it a little bit. Impressive context windows, referring to what you were saying. It seems that it remembered every single thing, to be honest, even without prompting it, even without... So beginning of a new chat, and if I would tell something about previous chats of 3 months ago, he would immediately reference to it. So quite crazy. But we live in a crazy world, so I think it's fair.
No question. So let's swing over to how this applies in the GXP world, because that's really where I found you most fascinating. And I have what is still considered, I think, a very controversial take in the life sciences world around validation. And it's not because I don't believe we need to do it. It's that I don't believe we do it very well or in the right risk-based approach that we should. And this is one of those where I'm like, how is this controversial? Like, I don't understand. And I grew up in the paper validation days, and the screenshots and the signatures. So my lens on it is still somewhat controversial. I wrote a white paper 2 or 3 years ago now that still comes up. And still people are like, how did you get them to do this? How did you get your organization to do it? I'm like, I don't know. Logic, I guess, like risk and logic assessment. Like, so I would love to hear your lens on that in general, how it applies to these new emergence of tools where we're trying to plug AI into this conversation. And then let's go there. I have another topic at the end of that, but I think that's a good start.
Absolutely, and I think there's already so much juice on that particular topic, right? I mean, it's easy to agree. I read your article. I think the one you were mentioning, and I have a lot of commonalities with what you defend. I think you are an optimist, and I think that's a cool thing. The way you also see the tools that you are an expert on, and the things that they are and they aren't, etc. But there's definitely a thing that I can agree with you. I mean, I'm a quality guy to start with. I spent 11 years in quality, around deviations, audits, observations, etc. I'm very much focused on these topics, and to me, there's different ways of doing validation. What I try to bring in terms of my concept is that I speak often about trust architecture because people kind of tend to agree into what needs to be done, but then you need to be able to translate a little bit into a map, into something that you can do on a Monday, for instance, or you can start decomposing it, right? And please don't quote me on all of these terms, in the sense that I don't think that I invented necessarily something new. I think our world, the pharma world, already speaks about a lot of these things that I speak already.
Yeah.
It just needs to be properly framed. And the way validation has been framed in the past, and because you place the question over that angle, it has been placed in order to validate something with a certain point in time, with putting certain windows for a deterministic system that would always behave in a certain way, which means that when you take a photograph of a certain configuration, and if you don't change the configuration, if you keep it as it was, it will always behave like that. So you can trust on the process.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you have arguments on how much time we take to do it itself, but once then we could trust about the result,
Sure.
and it would trust that as soon as you don't touch the configuration, this holds true.
Correct.
The emergence of the probabilistic models, where things are not a function anymore of the input, but they change depending on your input. To me, changes the way we exert validation. So we cannot anymore validate in one point in time. We need to create a process. And we also don't validate anymore the model itself. We need to validate the workflow around the model. So we need to validate the system, the tool. We need to validate the human that looks into the result. We need to validate the infrastructure and the guardrails that we put around in order to detect if the probabilistic model fluctuates over or outside the borders or not. There's lots of uncertainty in operationalizing some of these concepts. I mean, even from the regulators, and there's a lot of industry that is waiting for the regulators to kind of issue concrete guidelines about this. I think there's already a lot outside, to be honest. I'm not sure if we need to wait much more. You see also some convergence from some of the regulators into this. But the initial position of the regulators was, you know what, probabilistic models are dangerous. Don't use them in anything related with patient safety. Right. I think that assumption is not justified if you are able to put around the model an ecosystem, an architecture, how I usually call it, that allows you to basically achieve predictability. I think this is one of the key elements of at least the concept that I defend, is that it's trust. To me, it's predictability that you can sign under. So that's basically it.
Interesting. So let me push on that a little bit. If you have a predictably acceptable, and I assume it's got to be a range with these types of models, you have a predictable range of output that is sufficient. You're not risking patient safety or product quality. At what point, looking ahead, when do we trust it to not have to check it? Like, and it feels like that window keeps getting smaller and smaller.
Right.
Where we're like, okay, I know it's trained. I know it's always a little different, but it's usually right. And that usually right turns into it's always right.
Yes. Right.
And then turns into it's better at it than we are.
Right.
If you train it right, like that just closes very quickly. Yeah.
Exactly. And this perception is the dangerous thing, right? I mean, often people speak about the holy grail of this kind of probabilistic validation. When you just say human on the loop, everybody seems to be very comfortable with it. Okay, so we have a human on the loop, that's fine. But part of the problem that you were asserting to also relates with the human being on the loop. So you were speaking about the behavior of the model, but even when the human is in the loop validating the output and accepting or not accepting the output, I mean, this in paper this works beautifully, but when the human in the loop needs to at 5 p.m. in the afternoon needs to validate the 300 requests that he received, and he has his wife waiting at home, and he just wants and actually the last 257 outputs were perfectly fine. He actually was very thorough. He checked everything. This is fine. This one is certainly fine as well. Click, click, and click, and click. And so that is why I defer back into your point about the logic of applying risk, because applying blindly the logic, whatever criteria, and the model that I defend about trust architecture has different dimensions. And all of them compound into the logic of building this kind of architecture, a building or envelope, if you want, that ensures a series of factors to which you trust. I don't want to twist the term here, but that guarantees that you trust the system in a way that you can sign under it. But one of them is so, for instance, we had many different problems, and the reason why I built this kind of scaffolding of terms that I call trust architecture is it's because there's different factors that I'm not sure. I probably don't want to bother your audience with speaking about all the 7 of them, but let me take one of them, like the provenance, which is often something that I speak about. If you can trace what the system saw. So this is nothing new, but it's a component that is brought to the table in order to create, as you said, the boundaries and compounding into the boundaries that allows the model to operate in a range where you are okay in signing over. And more than that, drift monitoring as well, right? So you are setting a boundary, and you said, I think you said, these boundaries are shortening more and more. Yes, they are. This is why putting the human on the loop everywhere does not make sense, but it might make sense to put him on the loop when the behavior of the probabilistic model moves outside of these boundaries.
What is the... Where do you start to measure the gap? And where does it... How do you convince people to fall on the right side of the gap? That's what I really want to know.
You mean in terms of abiding by the governance model, or in terms of...
Not letting it be a barrier to progress and feeling the potential benefit, right? So your example of, a human in the loop with now just a queue of things to approve versus let's have that person add value to the loop. Because a lot of stuff, I think, feels like check boxes that we've done for a long time under this guise of like, well, we might get inspected for this. They might look for this or that. And when you start to dig into the actual results of inspections, and this is what really prompted me, is like, oh, no one ever looks at this ever again, ever.
Yes, true.
And
they have filed 30 years in the binder.
and so it really starts to think, if you think about it holistically, like you're saying in this framework, can you put the entirety of an organization's philosophy towards good information practice and inspectability or like what is the problem we're actually trying to solve? Is it repeatable, safe production of drugs for patients? If that's the case, as the technology evolves, we have to have new lenses to make sure that the technology continues to suit that mission. And when I encounter most quality people, I am very complimentary of their level of detail. Like, it's a certain kind of brain. It's a certain kind of capability that's really good at that. And I just want to be like, can you just point your lens at the stuff that it's actually going to have an impact on those things, right? And how's that work for you in your experience in, as a quality person, having those types of conversations with the business and with your own organization to make sure that you're doing that at the right level?
That's a beautiful question, because I'm not sure if we are exactly at the level of maturity to be able to fine tune to the right exact point. And I appreciate a lot that you highlight the mindset of the quality people, because I think it's very much needed. On the other hand, we are guilty, and I say we, as a quality person as well, we are guilty as charged to sometimes do a lot of those tick boxing for the sake of tick boxing, because that's how we learn to do it, and that's
Yeah,
how.
yeah.
Um, um, the point of this is that for the longest time, in deterministic systems, people were used to make validation, check a box, done, solved until the next version, etc. The probabilistic model exponentiates the amount of theoretical points where the human needs to intervene. So if the human intervenes everywhere, and if everything is a checkbox, the human will be, it's not a human in a loop anymore, it's an overwhelmed person under paper or under stress.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And so you need to, getting back to a frame that you are fond of, you definitely need to apply the same thing that you already apply in quality into these models as well, which is kind of the risk-based approach in terms of, because a model that summarizes a meeting for you does not present the same level of risk of a model that is producing a safety report to be part of a submission package to present to a health authority, obviously. And so the measurement around the effort that you put into one versus the other needs to be obviously different. And we start by there. We start by defining what is the risk that is associated to your model to fail for this specific thing. If it's a summarizer of a meeting, does it mean that I got the name wrong? Is that critical? Does this require validation throughout? Does this require I think that's the fundamental place to start in order for you to decompose the different lanes of where you can have quick wins, because yes, it's a probabilistic model, but the risk that its outputs, the production of its outputs influence critical decisions in the company is very low, so you might not necessarily need to invest too much of your resources there, versus the ones where the risk is high and you need to do it carefully and you need to put more boundaries into place, more human in the loop, etc. But look, you would always need to do that. I mean, because if you don't do that, and if the failure propagates up to the point where an inspector will come and detect it, the output of it is much worse. And focusing on a topic that is also dear to you, to get fast to patients in terms of having innovation and in terms of having medications arriving there faster. This actually sounds slower. This, even when we put a lot of effort into it, but if we do it right first time, we avoid to need to correct it later. So it's actually faster, and it's actually empowering the organizations to do it fast. You just need, I mean, it's the same thing as what a quality organization has been doing for decades, right? Usually the quality organizations are dimensioned significantly smaller than what is the rest of the pharma organization, but being that R&D or whatever, which means that you can only act as a quality organization by sampling. You cannot be everywhere. You need to be where you assess it to be more needful, more riskful, more necessary, more impactful, etc. So I think it's not much different with this new paradigm. You need to act on proportionality as well. That's at least the way I see it.
Yeah, it's when it comes to especially the part that really got me going was around computer system validation, and the modern systems versus, you know, back when you would install things on multiple floppy disks or on CDs, or somebody in your company was writing the code. Yeah, you better validate that. But like when we're subscribing to things, the whole process starts to break down. And, you know, in my case, in life sciences industry, there's a lot of, you know, like Viva, for example, a lot of these SaaS vendors, even Salesforce, you could talk about on the commercial side. Like, there's a configuration that you do to match your process, and that is what you should make sure works. But we spend months and months making sure that the configuration we do works. And that is such a waste of time. And it's hard to get people to make that switch too. And, I think that is the part that's you have people complaining to software companies that they're sending too many new features. We don't have time to it's like, you don't do that to Apple and Microsoft. Like
I could talk a lot about that from my own experience as well, and it's a super interesting angle. I mean, you are again here and optimistic, and I value that a lot, because you are always assuming that the client on the end receiving point keeps the configuration as it receives it. I mean, you do keep the configuration of an Apple phone when you receive it. I guess you can jailbreak it, but then you also cannot expect the Apple to support you if you screw it up somehow. But I also see, and because you gave examples that I'm familiar with, like Viva and others, I also see a lot of clients incorporating in the standard configuration things that are specialties of their own evolution and their own processes. Sure. Every pharma company thinks that they are very special. I'm not speaking particularly on my own case.
Yeah.
That's the experience that I have a little bit throughout. And for as much as we kind of go in the direction, I think more and more we want to go in the direction of standardization, because companies like Viva and others even put the tonic word on into that, because the closer you are to the proposed model that they have, the more enabled you are to not only absorb, as you said, new features more spontaneously and more diligently, but also they even make a point of certain features, particularly like AI now and others, actually only working well, or they can only guarantee the output if they are acting according to their standard configuration. If
Correct.
you were a client that decided to go south and decided to change stuff because you are special, and that's fine. But then you pay the price of that speciality as well. So that's actually a thing that I see more and more organizations maybe sometimes even reverting or taking a little bit of a step back. Because people start realizing the impact that it is to be special and to do things specially.
And it gets the drift away from the standard really probably doesn't pay much benefit back at the end of the day. What you're doing, and this was very fascinating to me, is when you do new implementations, who do you ask? You ask the people that are already doing it the other way, what are your requirements for the new system? And they write it so that the new system acts like the old system that they're used to.
Absolutely.
Instead of just saying, well, what is meant to happen and how is it supposed to work?
Absolutely.
And then you just get into the human element of change management and that sort of thing. So when it comes to validation and quality and repeatable, that's where, to me, AI throws such a wrench into our idea of what is that it feels like, you and I have been in this space for quite a while already, but we're still at the very beginning, oddly.
Yes,
and it feels like that adoption understanding is going to take longer than we would like it to. So I'm trying to figure out, like, how do we come up with a better story, a better conversation, so that we can bypass and leapfrog some of the lessons that we've had to learn in the past the hard way. And it's almost incumbent on us to do so. And I think that's why I called the podcast Operations Utopia, because I realize, like, it's really hard to make these changes, and they will take longer than I want. But I think the more that we can have these, like, really just open conversations about what we're trying to do, what's possible, and what to look out for is really powerful. I think what's lost on people is the amount of structure that you must have in your data before AI can even help you a little bit in a real valuable way. And then like you said, a probabilistic model versus a deterministic model, you understand that, but I don't know that also is common understanding, because if you read about AI, you would assume it is actually just really good at deterministic outcome, right? Like,
And it's a beautiful deterministic machine that gets it right all the time.
yeah, and that is not even close. And so if you've played with any imagery, which I wanted to ask you, by the way, how you've come by your imagery, because you get to keep it consistent. It's better at doing that now. But like a year ago, if you said, okay, it's perfect, just change the color of the eyeglasses, it would give you a whole new picture the next time. So that's getting better too. But like, I think that's the thing is like, we can't assume that we just created like a calculator.
No, not at all.
Like it is.
But you know, but you can always see I'm a glass half full guy. What you just said has definitely two angles. Do you want to see the part of the water that is not there, or the part of the water that is there? Because yes, it is true that every single prompt changes, and you have no idea, because you touched the example of the pictures that I have on my LinkedIn, and you have no idea how many tries sometimes I need to have to actually sometimes just put a little bit more of beard in that model that I really like the image, but it's just missing a little chunk of beard. You have no idea, but yes, it's a process, and it's a hand of a the end point of a comprehensive result out of long prompting and scaffolding into building consistently a certain thing, and then taking that as reference. It doesn't always work, and I think that's true there, as it is true in many other things. The more we are conscious about that, but you touched so many juicy topics. I mean, you started touching about the data, right, and the quality of the data that is underneath. I mean, it links with what we were saying as well. I mean, the model will produce an image based on the data that I input into it. If it has a reference model, if the data is sound, if it's consistent to what I said before, if I want to kind of create a storyboard of characters, of personas that seem relatable in one way or another, right?
Yeah.
For the organizations like ours, when we speak about data in the pharma world, I see that, of course, and I think I'm not saying anything special here. Everybody kind of sees it. Organizations in this space have a problem with the data quality, I would say. And this surprises exactly zero people, because not so much because we were always totally aware of what was there, but more because if you think about it, there was never the incentive to do something about it. I mean, you have organizations doing operations for decades, sometimes even centuries. So you just compound the amount of data that these organizations have, right?
Yeah.
And as you said in some minutes ago when we were looking, some of that information is filed in a beautiful filing system in these archives that are very nice to visit. But not necessarily to drive intelligence of information from there. And why? Because there was never the capability to do so. If you think about it, I mean, yes, sure, I can retrieve a piece of a change document if I need to, because there's an inspection that is requesting it for me. But will I ever assemble the gist of it in order to kind of I need to digitalize it first of all. You said it before. You are from the paper time. Me too. And the paper time is not that long ago. Many companies worked through their digital transformation fairly recently. So there's a lot of that data that is not digitalized, and there's a lot of data that is digitalized that is unstructured or siloed or unconnected, etc. And because there was no such power in terms of technology that could leverage that data to do something useful out of it, to extract intelligence out of it, like the AI is doing now, there was no incentive. I mean, why would you put 10 individuals in a room digitalizing, cataloging years and decades of documentation if in the end you would not do much with it? I mean, maybe you would visit it, you would maybe find a way to search for it, but not to the extent of what it exists now. So that's what I mean about this surprises no one. Not because people didn't know that it was there, simply because there was no motivation whatsoever to correct it, right?
Yeah, it would almost be an interesting exercise to digitize all of the stuff sitting in boxes at Iron Mountain, and and then get some AI analytics on it. Like,
Exactly. But then you need to think about it, and in where is the value of it?
right.
I was having a conversation today with a colleague exactly about this point, because um, when people start thinking, you need to have your organization with AI ready data, and in order to be able to then leverage the full power and the full capability of it,
Yeah.
etc. And that becomes such an elephant in the room that freezes action, freezes people to actually move forward, right? And my question is sometimes, where is the value? Because you made a vendor assessment 10 years ago. That vendor is not the same anymore. This
Right.
10 years, either the vendor is out of the market, it evolved, it changed. If you actually want to work with it again, you need to assess it again.
Yeah.
What is the real value of? I'm not saying all the data that is in the background is historic, but a good chunk of the data, right? So
Yeah.
is it worth it to invest 80% of your time patching the data up to par so that you can leverage and grow from here? Or actually would you want to look more towards the future and towards what you are
Yep.
building, because this is what informs the future? The organization is not living informing from the past, it's living informing towards where they want to go, right?
Exactly. I think about this all the time when migration projects come up, because at a previous organization I was with, there was you get on the steering committee, they start telling you what they're going to do, and they have a 3-year plan and millions of dollars, and you're just watching, and you're like, yeah, but, and this was something simple like a document management system or something, right? And you're like, okay, so you're going to migrate everything at the same level and take 3 years to do it. And we know that all of that stuff in there mostly is garbage, unusable, but we're still going to spend time migrating it, instead of only start in the brand new system the way things should be, things that are moving forward.
Right.
And you can just freeze that archive and it's searchable. If you need it, it goes in the new system, and we're done in a month.
Right.
So it's those types of conversations, to your point earlier about what's the value, what is the cross-functional discussion. Has the cross-functional discussion happened because they're so siloed, right? Like you could say, the clinical organization, their data is really solid because they've been working in this structured CTMS for years and everything's good. But when it comes to handing that off to another part of the organization, say like clinical supply chain, or to commercial for a discussion, or to regulatory for submission, it starts to fall apart, because oh, you called the product this, we called the product that, and we didn't know that they had to talk to each other, right?
Absolutely.
Or
and that's another failure mode that you are pointing towards. Thank you for bringing that up, because I mean, even in the unlikely scenario that within your silos, within your regional data lakes, you have everything pristine, super high quality, good, looks good, well organized, even digitalized. The interconnectability and interoperability that you're talking about, the value that, because this is worth the effort if the sum of the parts is bigger than the parts alone, because I want to be able to extrapolate as an organization how I become more efficient, how I deliver, again, back to your point, how I deliver more medication to more patients faster, and so I can only do that if I'm able to establish synergies from end to end, from literally, right? So I mean, the pharma innovation process is long enough. It's already long enough to not take advantage of those synergies. And to be very honest, I believe this kind of detection, the understanding that the process can be improved so much, is what is attracting so much attention from frontier labs and others outside of the pharma world, is because I think they feel that there's so much capability of improvement in our arena. But in order to be able to improve it, I think you need to be mostly focused and be future-oriented focus.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not saying it doesn't matter what is behind, but cut the line until where you want to go. Not necessarily for the last 50 years. Maybe cut some reasonable time where you feel that the data that you can connect from is useful for your decision taking today and tomorrow, and move from there, and you will leave your organization in a much better place to be adapted to what's coming.
Yeah. All right, I have a controversial question for you, because I think in our space, when we talk about GMP, GCP, and then you have this G little XP, where the X is substitute whatever you want, right? I feel like we're missing a standard. And I think the standard that we're missing is good information practice. And the reason that sticks in my mind is because I have a background in knowledge management, and I have a background in the operations regulatory space, where we always get thrown into the GXP world because the little x, depending on how you rate things, could mean, is this ever going to be used in a submission? Okay, you're GXP. It's like, okay, but let's think about it in how the real world works. And that is, if you had, instead of putting this into a system, you just had a spreadsheet on your desk. If every time you added a column to that spreadsheet, you had to wait 3 months to add the column, where's the risk? The risk is you forget all the stuff you were supposed to put in the spreadsheet, right? That's a bigger risk than somebody saying, hey, did you add a column?
Yeah.
Right? So that, to me, is writ large regulatory information management in the modern era. Is regulatory does not produce any data. It wraps data in information so we can find it, and it hands it off. And so I would love to have a GIP that I could say my system is fully validated under GIP.
You're not happy to the amount of letters that we already have. So as if it's not enough, the ones we have, you want another one. That's fair enough. I mean, we are in the age of proliferation. I don't know how many CXOs exist nowadays. We can also have GXPs exponentially growing. I'm fine with that. No, that's part. I recognize some of the things that you were saying from the thought process that you share online.
Throw holes, like blow holes in it. That's why I wanted to talk to you.
No, I revert back into my logic of risk-based approach rather than the GXP per se, because again, if I know that the traditional way of looking into GXP is that as soon as you touch one specific piece of data that is labeled as GXP, then everything else around it is GXP. I think that's overdimensioned, and I understand the reason why you get concerned, because in the end this blows out of proportion. So it's like the fixing is not justified by the worry. So you are just blowing things out of proportion. I think the provenance and the output of it is so. Your argument is that the regulatory space or the regulatory activities, in the end, they take data from GXP compliant spaces, they put them together. Of course, you can argue that the process of putting things together is in itself generating data. I mean, you put things together on a Monday, you revise them on a Thursday, on a Friday you submit it. That's data. That's metadata, at least. So I'm not able to trace such a black and white division over what is the process of harnessing data, or if that is GXP or not. But I'm with you on the logic of dividing in containers what needs to be done. Yeah. I think the way we map it is almost like a switch. It's either on or off. It's GXP or it's non-GXP. And people are almost afraid. And the problem of that is that if it's the same problem as for AI governance as well, right? If you make it too difficult, if you make something like an elephant in the room, people, it's like water. It finds the easiest path to go through. Yeah. Right? So I see people, when they make GXP assessments, I see people almost squeezing their brains out in order to try to map a certain thing that in order to not be GXP,
Right.
so that they can eventually push things forward. Because if, God forbid, it is GXP, God knows exactly what we need to do in order
Yeah.
to ensure that this. So I think this already points into a system that there needs to be rules of proportionality applied even within. So it cannot just be a black or white. Yes, it's GXP, non-GXP, and if it's GXP, you need to do a train of things, and if it's not, it's free for all. So I think it cannot be, and that part I agree with you fully.
And I've landed in a space where I've embraced GXP in a modern system way that I think it actually is more traceable, more inspectable because the way modern systems work. For example, not just in document management, but in the system administration console itself, it's tracing every click. So, like, if you made a change, if you have a reason for the change and it was justified and approved, there's no reason to wait. So, and there's no quality risk. Everything is captured, and you could stand on that. You could say, "I'll pull the audit trail. It has 10,000 10,000 reasons and proof that we did what we said we were going to do." So, I backed off of non-GXP to like modern GXP using the systems that are available to us. And it's a pretty comfortable spot because now I can stand very strongly on the business changes to the systems and why they were harmonized the way they were. So it was a great learning experience for me to put that out there, to your earlier point of like, you got to put your point out there and let people argue it and fix your mistakes, adjust your thinking where it needs some honing, and I think that's very powerful. And I think what didn't happen for a long time was those discussions.
Absolutely.
It was just black and white. Nope, it's a submission. It's GXP.
Absolutely.
You're in jail for 3 months. Like, it's just like.
Exactly. And I think I definitely see to the merit of the regulators as well. I see a different vibe, if you want to call it like this. I see the beginning of a maturity in our sector about the perception that we cannot do this alone. None of the components of the system can do this alone. The industry lacks an unbiased third party to nudge where it needs to be nudged. The regulators lack the expertise. The third-party vendors, the companies that work around these two big peers, like an incorporated view. And I think, I recently wrote about this with a colleague of mine, because I'm a fan of sandboxes, of experimental places where all of these parts can actually participate and kind of try to define together how good looks like for this thing.
I agree 100%.
We should not be reinventing the wheel everyone, because to me this type of information, I'm not speaking about IP information. I'm speaking about if you as a company has discovered a beautiful new molecule, that should be protected for sure. It was a result of your investment. But we are talking here about what we usually call as pre-competitive information, right? So it's things that everybody needs to do, and we can all gain efficiency if we learn how to do it better. In a similar way that when we had problems in other regulated industries like aviation and others, it's not like suddenly if a safety measurement in aviation was discovered that only one company got the property of that and the only one. Why? Because the greater good of the passengers and of people that travel in planes was at stake. So there was a space to share. It's not because of that Fly Emirates or other company becomes better. There's other ways to differentiate from there, right? And so this is where I think our industry is maturing little by little, and I see very promising signs as well from the regulators, and that makes me hopeful towards the future as well on figuring this out together. And I think we need to do this from an institutional point of view and also from a responsible professional point of view. That's what I try to do as well, and this is links with the way I try to position myself in the public space.
Yeah, no, and you're doing an excellent job of it. I have to say, it's very refreshing, and I think when things are controversial or even just thought provoking enough to create conversation, I think it's gonna continue to move us forward. So I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today about this. And as this evolves, maybe we do another follow up, because we know the models are going to keep changing, and there's going to be always something new and interesting.
That's the fun of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time in a long time there's been a lot of stuff happening that's worth changing things too, which is also pretty exciting. Like, if you've been around for a while, you've watched it be pretty stale. Yeah.
And this is where I think that, maybe to wrap it up, this is where I think it's another factor for ensuring that this communication flows. I come from quality, as I already told you, and I come from a place where people are very used to know what they are talking about. There's lots of historical background. There's guidelines built from experience, from flaws, from serious mistakes that built a corpus of knowledge.
Yeah.
Where people sit, and people are very used to sit from that and say, you know what, you can do this, you cannot do that. It's black and it's white. Yeah. And all this age of AI dawn, if you want to call it like that, shifts every professional from their seat. Yeah. And when you are in this kind of insecure place where you don't know exactly where do you say that it's black and it's white, the only way for us to progress together is exactly to help each other and to kind of, oh, look, from my point of view, this is black and this is white. What do you think? Maybe not. But we always get richer out of that interaction. And I think that's the way I see it, at least. Yeah, very fun. Well, thank you, sir. This has been a very exciting conversation. I really value your input and your content. So it was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.